Thank you, everyone, for listening to this week's episode of Circle City Conversations. In this episode, we continue our conversation with Detective Torres of the Indianapolis Metropolitan Police Department. Thanks for listening. Probably doesn't. I mean, what we do is so adversarial too, unlike a profession where, let's say, you're selling someone computer equipment. Yeah. You got someone that needs computer equipment and someone that sells it to them at a hopefully an affordable price and provides good service, and everyone's happy, right? Mm-hmm. And what I do with personal injury cases and death cases in the criminal world, it's adversarial. Yeah. One party wins, one party loses, usually, And so that, I think, kind of lends itself to, it being more combative.
It can be, yes. Yeah. It can be. And understandable. I get it.
Yeah.
I'm not happy about it all the time, but I understand.
Right.
And, but again, I try to stay as professional as possible.
Yeah.
I mean,
you have to be.
I seem to be professional when I testified in front of you, right? I mean,
yeah.
That's what I do. That's what you're supposed to do. And, but also the defense also should be professional as well. Sometimes that doesn't happen.
No.
And, but it is what it is.
Right.
And, but I have no hard feelings towards people because we're all trying to do our job.
Yeah.
And, it's really interesting when you have people, they have a perception of law enforcement, police officers.
Right.
For whatever reason. Again, it could be TV, it could be just whatever. Social media, oh my gosh. It's just so many different things that can influence people nowadays. And it's interesting sometimes when I have victims' families, like I said, that, they normally would not want to talk to us, but but I go to them.
Yeah.
And to be able to have dialogue with people that normally would not have dialogue with police, I feel fortunate that I can do that. Even under a bad situation where this family has just lost a loved one.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm having dialogue with them and them realizing there's another part of this. It's not what you always see, not the perception that you always see.
Yeah.
I'm sitting down talking to them.
Yeah.
And they want to be heard.
Of course. Yeah.
And and I let them talk. I let them speak to me.
Mm-hmm.
And they're frustrated, they're hurt. There's so many emotions that are going. And that's something that I tell them too is I don't ever want, and knock on wood, I've never lost somebody through violence.
Yeah.
Obviously we've all lost people through, medical issues, maybe even accidents, something where it just happens. But to have a loved one taken away from you, knock on wood, I've not had that. So I tell my families, I call them my victims' families. I tell them, I don't ever want to know what you're going through. I don't ever want to understand. I'm not going to sit here. That's another thing you cannot tell people. If you don't understand, if you haven't been through something, don't tell them you understand. Cannot do that to people, especially people that are vulnerable. They're hurting. And when you tell them, oh, I understand what you're going through, you don't. They could see through that.
Yeah.
So at that point, you are lying to them. They could see that. So how can you have a true dialogue with somebody when you're telling them, I understand what you're going through, when you don't?
Exactly.
Okay. So I tell them that. I said, I don't ever want to know what you're going through, but I've been around this a lot and I've seen a lot of this, but I've never been through what you're, and that's something, and you have to be that way. You cannot, because people are a lot more keen on things than you think.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean, just because you have an education doesn't mean that you understand things.
You could be the most educated person in the world and completely dense to other people.
Absolutely.
Not be able to read the room or read the person's body language or anything like that.
But just small things like that.
Yeah.
That I when I reach out to people, when I talk to people, and even when I, talking to witnesses, stuff like that, where they're scared to death to come forward.
Oh yeah.
And I sit there and talk to them, and sometimes sometimes these victims never had anybody speak for them, so I try to speak for them.
Yeah.
I also tell, and I know I'm going through a couple things that I say to families, but I also tell them, when I get paid through the city, but I work for my victim. That's something that again, nobody told me to say that, but that's the truth. That's what I do.
That's how you feel.
That's how I feel. So I told them that. I said, I get paid by the city, but I work for them. And I also say that to witnesses and people that, because they're afraid, or for whatever reason. I said, and then I'd have people tell me, well, gosh, I'm glad that you're doing this, because God, if something happened to somebody in my family, I would like for you to make sure you're doing that too.
Oh yeah.
But it's something that, again, over the years, I've just developed my way of, because I didn't do this from the beginning. This was not something that was even shown to me. It was just, but I did watch other detectives and how they also spoke to other people.
Right.
And I've also seen how not to speak.
Yeah.
But that happens. We're human beings. There are going to be times where somebody's going to lash out. It happens.
Yeah.
We're not perfect. Nobody's perfect.
Look, you mentioned you've been doing this a long time. We kind of talked a little bit about cell phones. How has technology changed the way that you investigate a homicide?
Oh, immensely. Like I said before, when I first started on homicide,
Yeah.
now hardly anybody has a landline now. And if you do, you're like, oh my gosh, what's going on with that? But everybody has a cell phone. And so cell phones and social media have been a humongous thing in our investigations. But that's in anything. Technology has taken over in so many different ways, not just in law enforcement, but in, how people sell things, how people are reached out to, how news gets to people.
Yeah.
Everything has changed through technology. Now, I'm not a big fan of, I'm an old guy now. And I do remember when we only had 3 channels.
Oh, yeah. When you had to get up and turn the
I was
knob.
the remote for my parents. I'm like, click, 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 click.
Yeah.
But it is a significant thing. Cameras, everything.
Yeah. Lots of cameras everywhere.
And see, the thing is, and cameras are great, but we still need people to come forward. People think, oh, well, it was caught on camera.
Yeah.
Well,
right. That's it.
That's not enough.
Yeah.
We still need people to say, oh yeah, that's so-and-so.
Yeah.
And that, how do you know? Well, this is how I know.
Right.
And because really, if we could use cameras and not have to use people to testify,
yeah,
we would just show people, the jury, the TV, and say, this is it.
Right.
And it's not like on TV where you can get close onto that face and then have an ID,
No.
a perfect ID of somebody. No,
Right.
That doesn't happen. It happens on TV. It happens on, sci-fi stuff.
Yeah.
And maybe someday in the future when I'm gone, that may happen.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you still have to have the human element in it. And
Of course.
you still have, even with cell phones, even with all this stuff, the electronics, the cameras, everything, you still have to have the human part of this.
Of course.
And that has to be explained to a jury, how this all ties together. And that's what we did on that last case. It's a big part of a lot of investigations, not just in homicide, but in anything basically.
Right.
And again, when people are doing research on people, they're just researching people.
Just Google
them. Just whatever. It's out there.
Yeah.
And so yeah, technology has really stepped up. And,
oh yeah.
We have to step up with it.
Right. So how do you deal with the public and media scrutiny that often will accompany high profile cases?
I try not to listen to it.
You just don't.
I'm busy on my work. I put my work in and I let it explain itself. I let my work explain itself.
Yeah.
When it goes to, and believe me, I've had scrutiny and people questioning
right.
But that's just the way it is. And I try not to pay attention to it. And I try to just keep on point and what I'm doing, it's what I have control of. I can't control people.
Yep.
I can't control what the news says about me and there are some things that may be verified that should be said, but as far as my work and what people think of it, I let my work speak for me.
Yeah.
And that's what I do. And when it goes to a trial, and it's explained with the prosecutors and then I testify, but they explain the case, but I basically put it together.
Right.
So I let that speak for me. And if people have an issue with it, well, that's your opinion.
Yeah.
And I can't get in. And again, that's where the politics and all this other stuff comes in. I don't want to get involved. I'm not a politician. I just work cases. And so people are going to think whatever they want. The news can say whatever they want. And even when I say if something comes out in the media about another case in another jurisdiction, and people would ask me, well, what do you think of that? I said, I don't know the whole case.
You have to know it before.
I have to know before I want to say something.
That's good. Yeah.
And if there's something that that's put out there that looks, oh my God, that's really bad. But then I'm like, but I got to look at everything. I don't know the whole situation.
Yeah.
And it will be presented eventually. If it goes to trial, it's presented.
Yeah.
But I don't know the ins and outs of what happened in this situation. So I can't exactly say what I think of it.
No, it's so funny you said that. We get that a lot too. Someone will call a prospective new client they'll call and they'll say, well, what do you think it's worth? And I'm like, well, you just started treating. I can't tell you. We even had one lady, I remember she was an ex-insurance adjuster. So she knew a lot, according to her. And she wasn't able to get her case resolved. Boom. Of course she couldn't, because she can't file suit. She can't put pressure on the insurance company like we can. And she kept on asking me about the say, what do you think it's worth? What do you think it's worth? And then eventually she said, well, I find it hard to believe that someone with your level of experience can't tell me what the case is worth. And I'm like, all I'm hearing from you is you're telling me stuff. I don't have any documentation in front of me, you know? And finally I just said, which I say to people all the time, it's worth what a jury's willing to give you for it. It's worth what a jury's willing to give you for it. So it's just funny that, for example, in your profession, you're a homicide detective. People think, hey, I'm going to hand you this picture here and this right here, a list of bullet points. Okay. And then I want you to figure out if the guy's guilty or not. You can't do that. No, you can't do that. No. So what advice would you give to someone interested in pursuing a career in law enforcement or as a homicide detective, a young person?
Well, I would say, if that's something, research it, talk to people that are actually doing it. If you want to first, obviously you have to first get into law enforcement.
Yeah.
You have to work the streets. You have to work. And I would suggest, because the way I came up in the department, I went from street officer and I went to aggravated assault.
Yep.
And then I went to gangs, and then I went to robbery. And then I made it into homicide. Work your way up. Don't try to jump anything, because you have to learn from every level. I would suggest that. Put your time in on the street. Take care of it. If you want to, first of all, make sure you want to be a police officer. If you want to be a police officer, look into it, research it, and be prepared for it.
Yeah.
And talk to people that are actually, because I really, when I first decided to become a police officer, I really didn't have anybody in my family that was a police officer. So who do I talk to about this? I didn't really have. I had a couple friends, and then when I became a police officer, I didn't know what to exactly expect. I knew I wanted to do it. I took a 60% pay cut to become a police officer. Oh. So I wanted this.
Right.
And I asked for this. And then but if you get in law enforcement, you want to be homicide, do all the levels of investigations.
Yeah.
Because not only does it build you up in your mind as far as how to work cases, it also exposes you to different type of people. And then also, by being exposed to different type of people and different detectives, you now have a rapport. Now you understand how things are working. So then when you do get to homicide, you're like, oh, okay, I get why this is happening. And so if you go straight from the street straight into homicide, that's not a good thing. But if people think they could do that, then more power to you. But this is a difficult profession for so many different reasons. But if that's something you want to do, prepare yourself for it.
Yeah.
And also prepare your family for this.
I bet.
Because, and again, I'm very happy that, that my family has supported me immensely. My kids have, people in my family, my friends, they have a good understanding for all this time. And, I'm not saying this was easy at all. It's not, still not easy, but it's something that I can work with. And you have to mentally and physically prepare yourself for this type of job. It's not something that you can do and be unhealthy. You should be as healthy as possible, because there are times where you'll have marathon days and nights. Oh, yeah. And believe me, I like eating bad food. I like drinking beer. Yeah. I like having a cigar every once in a while and doing things like that. But also, I run, play golf, do different things to keep myself moving. And it's so you have to prepare yourself, because it's not like it is on TV. It's not easy.
Right.
It's not like, I'll just make this arrest and I'm done.
Yeah.
No, it's not. It's not that.
Speaking of TV, you were featured on a couple TV shows, The Shift and Crime 360. So tell me a little bit about that experience.
It was weird. It's I never thought I'd be on TV.
No.
I never thought that I would be part of any type of thing like that. But it was interesting to show how fake it can be.
Like this TV shows, like the sitcoms, you mean? Or
no, as far as they say this is, and some of the stuff that they show on these episodes, part of it's real, other parts are not. Some of that stuff is staged
because they got to sell it, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, they got to get viewers.
But it was, they're doing their job, but I remember telling one of the producers, I can't remember which show it was. I think it was Crime 360. I said, the way you changed the way you changed the story messed up the story. Oh. You cannot be stranger than fiction.
Right. I
mean, I'm sorry. It is stranger than fiction. You can't make this stuff up.
Right.
Some of the stuff that we deal with, you can't change it around. Now, sometimes they have to change it around for whatever reason, and they say that the watch whatever it rated better.
Right.
And I'm like, did you really show them the other way? But
how would you know that the other way would rate?
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So it was interesting, but like for instance, I think this picture here.
Yeah.
We were in Laredo, Texas.
Uh-huh.
And I remember we were interviewing the victim's mom, and she spoke only Spanish, and she's from Mexico. So we flew into San Antonio. We drove down to Laredo, Texas, and I have family in Laredo down there too. So it was really interesting to see this angle of But I'm sitting there just like we're talking in an interview room. She's sitting across the table from me, and that's probably one of the clips of me talking to her right there. I think, and she's just talking about her son. And she starts crying. She's a mom.
Yeah. And she lost her son.
Yeah, she lost her son.
Yeah.
And basically I'm almost done talking to her. And I look to the camera person and the producer, and they're like, we weren't recording. Have her do this again.
Oh my gosh.
I was livid.
Have her do it again like she's an actress? Oh my God.
So I explained to her what the situation was. And what they ended up showing is her, basically the second take, and she just started talking about her son again, and she just started crying again, I was so pissed off. I was like, this isn't a game, this isn't a show. Yes, a show, but it's not. This is real life.
Yeah,
and I was so pissed off, and it was unfortunate that and I was not.
You don't look too happy in the picture there.
I wasn't very happy.
Yeah,
but again, it is what it is.
Right.
It was, and it's my kids, they see it, my family, they saw it. They're like, oh my God, you're on TV. I'm like, right. That's something that'll be on for forever.
Yes. I'm sure it's on the internet. So, it is on the internet. The manual found it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Yeah. That's Crime 360.
Yeah. Yeah.
38th and Franklin. Yeah. Ray the Copas.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Oh yeah.
So you mentioned you run. You've completed many marathons here in Chicago and Milwaukee. Yeah.
It's just a way. I may not look like a runner, but I try to. I don't run very fast, but it's something that, again, a person asking, they want to work in homicide or they want to be a police officer. You have to get those a way to properly deal with stress.
Right.
Running is one thing that has helped me a lot. Mm-hmm. Playing golf, getting out, just doing traveling. I like traveling, but running. I've gone to Milwaukee, Chicago. Mm-hmm. Here in India, I've run several. I'm breaking down now to just 10Ks now because I'm getting a little bit older and my legs just don't carry as much as they used to.
Get a beat up and
But I've gone to
very cool.
Sedona.
Yeah. I heard it's beautiful out in Sedona.
I would recommend if you ever go. Two places, Sedona and Vail, Colorado. Vail, Colorado.
Yeah, that's what I've heard from a lot of people.
And it is
really
out there. And it's
check it out.
And the flights from here to Denver are not too bad.
Nope. No, I've been out to Denver a few times. That's a place that's changed a lot over the years. A lot. Yeah. So I went out to Red Rocks to see a concert a few years ago out there, and it was totally different.
Yeah.
So speaking of concerts, your favorite band is Metallica. Yeah.
And a lot of the 80s rock, I still. I grew up. So that's
you're an 80s kid.
Metallica, Poison. It's just,
Journey.
Journey, yes.
New Journey or old? The new singer is not bad.
He sounds pretty good, but I just see Perry as
he is the original.
He's the guy. But I like all kinds of music, but I stick to a lot of that. But Metallica is my top one. I thoroughly enjoy going, and listening to them and again, that's another way when you're running, I listen to music and it's just a way to not realize that you've been running.
Right.
It's a mind thing. And a lot of people they think, running is a very physical thing. No, it's a very, very mental thing.
Right.
you try to forget that you're running.
Yeah.
And so you listen to music or do something else.
Yeah. You've been here in Indianapolis working in the Hispanic community for 16 years now. Let's see. Well, you were a homicide detective.
Even before, 2001 when I first started in the department here.
Yeah. So nearly 25 years, 23 years. So how has the Hispanic community changed here in Indianapolis?
It's grown it's grown considerably.
Yeah.
Which is, I'm glad.
Yeah.
There were still a lot of the same struggles.
Yes.
But one thing that the department we've been very fortunate is that when I first got out of the department, we didn't have that many Spanish speaking officers.
Mm-hmm.
That's growing.
Good.
And we're getting a lot more officers. But what's interesting is that you have some of the kids that grew up here. You grew up here. Were you born here too? So there are kids like him that are growing up and they want to be police officers. And I love seeing that because they have an understanding of the community even more than I do.
Because they grew up
in it. Yeah. And that has really helped us address certain things, but there's still a lot of issues that, and I've said this for a long time, the Indianapolis Metropolitan Police Department, our responsibility is to help people and, whether they're victims, witnesses, suspects, whatever, your immigration status does not matter. That's not our job. When I ask somebody, when I'm investigating a case and it happens to be somebody that was either they're a witness or a victim's family, something like that, and they are a victim and they're Latino, and or the defendant's also Latino or something like that, or a suspect's Latino, your immigration status does not matter to me. It doesn't matter to us. And I know people are afraid to come forward, especially in the Latino community,
right?
Because a lot of it's enclosed. They don't, because they're afraid of coming forward because they're afraid of the immigration thing. That, in fact, if you're a witness of and I can't explain U visas, you could maybe explain visas better than I can.
You're the victim of a crime.
Victim or a witness. Of a violent crime. That could be a possibility. I'm not saying it's guaranteed.
No.
But it's a way to.
Yes.
And I don't think that's explained well enough in the community.
Nope.
And I don't know why it's not.
It's not. And it's funny. There's even, so we do construction site things, accidents, and there's even immigration avenues for people that cooperate with OSHA investigations. Absolutely. Because you go to a construction site and probably 70-80% of the people there are Hispanic, and a lot of them may or may not be undocumented. But if these companies are putting these people in a position where they're going to get hurt dangerous position, we all want safety because whether that person's in a dangerous position or the Caucasian guy next to him could potentially get hurt, and so, or the citizen or whatever. Right. That's good to hear that.
I think, in fact, I think we have one officer who is actually from Mexico, grew up in Mexico.
Yeah. And
he came over here. And I have to find out who he is.
Yeah.
But I heard he's been doing some great things on the department.
That's great.
And that's something that, we should have. But in the end, my thing has always been the most qualified people are the ones that should be doing the job. Exactly. And people could take that however they want to. And when somebody's asking for help, when they're calling 911, they say, well, I only want this type of officer showing up though for my help.
Yeah.
No, when you ask for help, you're asking for help. You want whoever showing up. Right. Doesn't matter what color they are. Doesn't matter if they're gay or straight. Doesn't matter if they're Muslim. Doesn't matter if they're Baptist. Doesn't matter if they're atheist. Does not matter at all.
Yeah.
When you dial 911, you're asking for help. Or if somebody's asking for help, they're not going to say, I'm not going to take it. I'm not going to want that help.
Yeah.
And I think that it's important, because having Spanish-speaking officers, because you don't have to be Latino to speak Spanish.
Nope.
But you have people that look a certain way in the community. Like when I walk into a door, or you walk into a door in a Latino home,
yep,
they're like, okay, well, other people
are different than when I would walk in there.
Right, exactly.
They wouldn't think that I could speak Spanish.
Exactly. But you know what? It's really interesting too, when I speak to people that only speak Spanish, they're relieved that there's somebody they could speak to.
Of course. Yeah.
And I tell this to people that don't totally grasp that. I said, well, just imagine going to Mexico and you're not in a vacation spot. you're in the mountains somewhere.
Yeah.
Or you're in somewhere else. Nobody speaks English. Okay. Something just happened. You want to report it. You want to say something, but nobody speaks English. And then you get that one person that shows up and can speak Spanish and English.
Yep.
And you're just like, oh my God, I got to hold on to you.
Right.
And I'm going to tell you everything I could tell you.
Yep.
And that's what happens sometimes.
Yeah.
I mean, I grew up, my mom only spoke Spanish. So thankfully I had that growing up. My dad, he spoke Spanish and English. In fact, my mom, if it wasn't for my mom, I wouldn't know any Spanish.
Right.
Because my dad, he came up here when he was a teenager with the family. They went through the process and everything. They came up here, became legal citizens or whatever. But when my dad moved up here, he was a teenager, early teens, and he had an accent, heavy accent. So he was ridiculed.
He wanted to assimilate.
So yeah. So
Yes.
he wanted all of us kids
Yes.
to only speak English.
Yeah.
And that happens.
It does.
But with my mom, she only spoke Spanish. So I thank God for my mom to teach me the Spanish that I can speak. Now, I don't speak as well as I used to.
Right.
So I don't speak it every day. And just like anything else, if you don't use it, you lose it.
Right.
I don't speak as well as I used to. I still can speak it. I can still understand it.
Yeah.
But yeah, with my dad, he was just like, he did not want us to have an accent. We were here. We were born here. But he did not want us to go through what he went through.
Exactly.
And that's the reason why. Now, when I was younger, I didn't understand that. But then as I got older, I'm like, now I get it, Dad.
Yeah.
You didn't want us going through that ridicule or that. And nowadays it's not going to, I mean, you may get ridiculed or whatever. It may have, but it's not like it was when he was up here, when he was in Northwest Indiana. Because my grandfather came up here to work in the steel mills during World War II.
Yep. Because
we needed men would work because all men were off to war.
Yep.
So we needed, and so they came up. That's how, you have generations of Latinos in Northwest Indiana and Chicago and Pittsburgh and other steel towns.
Right.
Because you have that. That's what happened. But, it's interesting, but I know the community here is getting, well, the food's amazing.
Right.
And you say that too.
So good.
And it's gotten a lot better than when I first got here.
Yeah.
There were hardly any here, but any restaurants that were worthy. But I think it's getting better, but at the same time, it's also getting difficult. It's but we all got to work on it together. And again, I can't emphasize it enough. Your immigration status does not matter for us. Okay?
Doesn't matter for me either. Yeah.
And, if say a defendant isn't illegal, well, we go through the process, he's sent to prison, then it's up to ICE to do what they need to do.
Right.
Okay. We'll notify them.
Right.
They'll know about it. And, they may have other information, especially when it comes to victims, witnesses, families, people. We can't fix something if we don't know about it. Okay. I think it needs to be understood that it's good to come forward if there's something going on, because if the worst thing that could happen when a crime happens or a violent crime happens in an area, the worst thing that can happen is nothing.
Right. Exactly.
And if we have to rely on the community to work with us any community, it doesn't matter, Latino, whatever community, I don't care. And when I think of communities, I don't think of race. I think
Places,
some people, when they say community, they just say a certain race. I'm talking about areas.
Yeah.
Because areas can be diverse.
Exactly.
So the community itself in that or area has to help themselves by letting us know what's going on.
Right.
And to come forward when something bad happened, or come forward just to say hi.
Yeah.
That's not a bad thing either. Hey, how you doing? Whatever. I think that's a good thing. Unfortunately, when I show up on a scene, something really, really bad has happened.
Yeah.
When I show up to somebody's house, something really, really bad. Okay. So that's not a good thing, but there are times where I think the community should also be like, hey, come on over here. And, businesses, they should be like, welcome officers, so that the community, and I'm referring to the especially Latino community right now, where businesses they should welcome officers to come in, and officers should be welcome to have dialogue with people, just to have dialogue with them.
Right.
And to show that, hey, we're human.
Just like them. Yeah.
Just like them. And we have cares, we have things and they can approach us without being like, oh my God, are they going to send me away? Unfortunately, that's the perception that's being put out there, but that's not the case. And I think both sides, I shouldn't say sides, both police or law enforcement and the communities themselves have to work on that together and to put that out there and make people more comfortable. We can only, as law enforcement, we can only do so much.
Yeah.
It's like being in a relationship with somebody and you're doing all the work and that other person's just keeping their arms back and you're out there reaching, but they're like, God, I don't know, maybe I'll do this.
Yep.
You need to put your hand out a little bit more so that it can be worked together. And I think only good things can come from that.
Right.
Because there's the misunderstandings that there's somebody that has never been around Latinos before, never been around the Latino community. They have misconceptions as well.
Right.
So that should be worked on with both sides.
Yeah.
And there should be some way of bridging that. And I know we're trying to work on things on top of everything else that we're trying to work, but also I think the communities need to work towards that as well. I know the communities have there are a lot of things going on as well, but we got to figure something out.
Yeah.
To make it so that we can kind of reach more in the middle with each other instead of somebody really trying to reach so much and the other one's like, I don't know. And then it could go both ways.
Right.
But I think that needs to be expressed more because we cannot fix something if we don't know it. We don't know of a problem where people are being victimized. If we don't know about it, if nobody's going to report it because they're afraid of what, of their status, because that's where the bad people really thrive.
Oh yeah.
They're like, oh, well, I know nobody's going to say anything. So I'm going to, you know what? I'm going to kill this person right here in front of everybody because I know nobody's going to say anything.
Yep.
And so they'll continue doing it. That's why areas stay bad.
Wow. So, Jose, this has really been a great conversation. Thank you so much. If anyone listening wants to get a hold of you, how do they do that?
I would say the best way is through email.
Yeah. Okay.
It's just jose.torres@indy.gov.
jose.torres@indy.gov. Well, that's fantastic. Thank you so much. Thanks everyone for listening to Circle City Conversations. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on any more future conversations.